Hello, my name is Sean Wren and welcome to the Bear Cave. This week's episode is a very special one because I was lucky enough to sit down and chat to DCEU photographer Clay Enos. Clay has been on the set of Watchmen, Batman vs Superman, and most recently Wonder Woman 1984 and Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead coming to Netflix. What makes this extra special to me is because I was lucky enough to speak to Clay 3 years ago before the release of Justice League. Now, if you want to check out that video, it'll be in the description below. Without much left to say, here is my chat with Clay Enos. Oh, and disclaimer, all photos in this video are taken from Clay's official website and Warner Brothers. So, enjoy.
So anyway, what do you want to chat about today?
I just wanted, when I was looking back at my old interviews that I did years ago, and I was just posting them up, and I thought, fucking hell, it's been in November. I think we talked earlier than November, but I feel like, I'm sure we talked earlier than November, and I was like, bloody hell, it's been nearly 3 years since
That's awesome.
That happened. And then when I was like, a lot's happened in 3 years, and a lot can happen in someone's life in 3 years. And so just to start with background with anybody who's going to be watching this, who's never heard of yourself, do you want to just give a quick intro to who Clay is?
Yeah, sure. I guess I'm best described as a photographer. And most of my work and the images that people see are related to movies. And my friendship with Zack and Debbie Snyder has offered me a whole bunch of sort of the DCEU stuff. And now as we all, grow and the world changes, I've branched out and made new relationships, as you do in any career. And still primarily work as a unit photographer, but I describe myself as a photographer in general, right? Yeah. I use a camera to render the world and try and express myself and maybe share my insights and perspectives to those willing to look.
So what has been the main thing that you've seen from the 3 years that we've talked, when we first spoke about photography, that you've seen change in that? Is it just been more like with phones? And
I think the phones in particular are quite stunning, right? We're really starting to ramp up on these exponential curves. So it's pretty exciting. And for me, it's incredibly empowering to see the power of a camera, and for photography to be able to reach into audiences that might have been passed by. So we're being gifted the voices of folks who we might not have heard from, right? And to mix metaphors, right? But we're seeing their world from their perspective, and with photographs that are quite accomplished due to the technology in our phones. And funny enough, I've just started working with Xiaomi, I guess a Chinese cell phone manufacturer that makes this unbelievable camera. And I'm going to juror a contest there, having a worldwide contest for people to hashtag shot by me. Okay. And so that, again, the way of the world, the relationships I had, I made a friend there, and they asked me to do it. I was happy to participate because that at its core is so important to me. It's giving voice to those who are not professionals.
Yeah.
And the phones do it. And that's it. The SLR world or the DSLR world is equally impressive in its pace, but they're a little more, there's a different kind of competitive spirit. So they're a little more planned and it's a little more mundane, whereas the phones are on fire.
Yeah. And so with this competition, I'm guessing it's going to be via Vero, I'm guessing, or is it going to be
actually they're a cell phone manufacturer, so they're happy to have their voice spread and their message on every platform, because ultimately what their game, I suppose, is to try and draw attention to the power of their phones and to the they want you to buy their phone.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah, of course. And so there's no, I don't want to talk about many political issues, but like the whole relationship between the States and China, and working with China? Is there some?
I like to think that I grew up in the Cold War.
Yeah.
It was, and when you peeled away that silliness, you realize that Olympic athletes were being denied their chance because of politics. Artists should be the voices that communicate across politics and through politics, and we're talking about photography here, not like propaganda.
No.
Or anything else, and human beings are human beings, and the muses do not care who your government is. And in terms of the politics of it all, it's cliche to say it, but there's the Chinese people and the Chinese government, there's the American people and the American government, and we have to distinguish that, and I think the arts are a lovely way to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a Huawei, so at this point I don't know if China's listening in at all.
Yeah, look, there are privacy concerns, all that stuff, but that's every government's racing to spy on its people because governments have an interest in preserving themselves. But I think we're entering a world of a wonderful democratized existence, and where individual voices have opportunities to express themselves way beyond borders. We already know it intellectually. But once we start to really fuse our hearts and minds, I think the world is going to just blossom with creativity and free expression. Look, there's probably a more dystopic, the empire, right? Dun, dun, dun. And I don't mean that to select a single country. I think governments in general have an interest in keeping themselves around. But if we can do it, boy, oh boy, a renaissance awaits us. Renaissance 2.0.
Right, away from politics now. Let's talk about because when we spoke, we was, as I said, it was coming out during Justice League. Did you ever see the theatrical cut of Justice League?
No, I never saw the theatrical cut of Justice League.
And then I was listening to a podcast, and I don't know if it was a throwaway comment or whatever, that you said, oh, maybe one day the Snyder Cut would release on a streaming platform.
This is
generally, was that just Netflix is around, maybe Netflix might pick it up?
Well, I think, look, I run optimistic.
Yeah. Oh, yes, of course.
And I tend to have my finger on the pulse of trends here and there, right? And the streaming revolution that's upon us, spearheaded by Netflix, made sense to me. The timing was way beyond, I'm not making predictions, but right? And so I held out an optimism and presented that, and sure enough, look at this. Yeah. Pretty exciting.
And I was physically crying when because we got it right at the end. Oh yeah, Zack Snyder's Justice League. I don't know. I mean, we won't be getting HBO Max over here, so I think it's going to be a different platform.
Would you? I don't understand the inner workings of the business plan, but I suspect there'll be something.
Yeah.
They'll share a relationship with Stars or some, some European equivalent. Because Warner Brothers has a footprint in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, so when was the first time you heard of this movement that at the time was very, very small, and then just grew bigger? When was the first time you even maybe saw the hashtag, or?
I suppose I would have seen it early on, right? Just because of the relationship I have with Zack, because of the small community on Vero that really gave birth to it and sort of fed, and where the fires were stoked. So I suppose it was early on, and again, everything from Zack Attack to the other fun little memes that have emerged with Zack.
Yeah.
They're so delightful, and they're so, they're sort of creative and fun and well-intentioned that I would support them. And so I probably saw it early on. I can't remember a specific one. And look, to be fair, while we're friends, and I went to college with his wife, with Debbie. So there's sort of I come from two angles, but on the professional level, as a still photographer, once a movie wraps its shooting schedule, I disappear. You know, I go back to the East Coast. We're on the West Coast, and my professional relationship is ended. Yeah. So then it's just little bits and pieces, you know, occasional emails, phone calls, texts, and the normal fare. So Vero was the way we could really see, we could be looking out the window at the same thing, like we were on set.
So you never returned to for like the reshoots or anything. So when that first run was, so basically when your job was done, you didn't need to go back for.
Yeah, and reshoots, you know, reshoots tend to be budgetarily constrained, and they'll tend to bring up, and because they were being done in England, they'll keep a local photographer and not fly me over there and stuff. Okay. But I mean, I've said many times, you know, I'm the still photographer, I'm not making the movie. So we're gonna pinch a penny. You're gonna leave the guy from the States at home.
Yeah, and then from there, like, how much of a downtime did you have before your next project took up, and what did you do between that time?
What has happened? Did I do A Star Is Born after Justice League? And then I did, you know, and then there was Wonder Woman 2, and there
was the
it's hard, you know, you get mixed up.
Yeah, the Patty.
You're a year and a half away from a movie that you worked on, and then it releases, but you've already worked on 2 other movies since then that they're going to release. And I was just redoing my website the other day, and I was confused. I had to IMDb myself. It's good that somebody like that's organized, because
at the end of the day, it's a useful source.
It's the best. It's the best. It's like I've outsourced my brain to so many other websites that are more concerned with it.
Yeah. Have you, when being a still photographer, do you have different relationships with when you're working on different sets? Like is working with Zack different to working with Patty than to working with Bradley?
Well, oh yeah, sure. I mean, every director brings there's another cliche you hear on set a lot, that it starts at the top, right? Yeah. The attitude and the perspectives and the demeanor of the director filters its way down through the set. And look, there's a professionalism across the board. So even if you're dealing with, and thankfully I've never dealt with, but I've heard stories of nightmares at the top, at anywhere along the line, it sort of gets checked and buffered. By the time my responsibilities are at play, I just tiptoe in and get out. I'm the ombudsman. I observe, but I'm not generally in the wrath of the higher ups. I have to smooth and ruffle the feathers of dolly grips more than I do of directors. And first assistant cameras, the guys focusing the camera, that I tend to be in their way more than the directors.
So is that who you normally would report to, like a second unit director?
It's not that I report to, I dance around them.
Yeah.
Right? Because in a movie set, you know, there's let's give this the camera.
Yeah.
A lot of times the camera's being focused by somebody standing right next to it, kind of judging distances and things. That's changing because of technology, but in general, there's somebody there, and then there's often a dolly grip or some grip protecting the camera and making sure it's moving. There's just this little triumvirate up at the front, and I have to try and sneak in there too, and try and get as close to the camera to stay on axis and not show the ladders and the other things that are, you know, not part of the story. And so given a certain move or a situation, it can be hairy, and the dance is, you know, I'll make 1 or 2 takes and get the hell out of there and let them make the movie.
Oh, I find it fascinating, because obviously, you know, you hear debate about the bigger stuff, you know, we're working with actors and whatnot, but we're working with, you know, you're more behind the scenes than a lot of people, so you can sit, like, you've got a full vision of what's going on, and as you said, you're trying to just work in between these gaps.
And my, you know, I'm as responsible, not me specifically, right? All unit photographers have a responsibility to tell the story of the film, but also to tell the story of the making of the film. So at any moment, there's an opportunity in front of me or behind me. Yeah. And that's kind of a fun place to be, or off to the side. And you're always looking, you're always on, which is a little different than a lot of folks on a movie set, you know, with the exception of some directors, producers, you know, people who have their minds in a million places. The average camera operator sets up a shot, you know, then everyone has their little bit of downtime within the day, just by the nature of, well, they set up a light, the camera operator can sit for a second, but I theoretically have to just choose my time to sit down. There's no one telling me that. There's no whip cracking. The movie gets made regardless of whether I'm sitting or not. So it's kind of fun. Look, I don't want to just ramble on here, but a movie set is such a distinctive place. It's such a mysterious place to the general public, and I feel a certain obligation to bring some of those mysteries to light, right, and to do it reasonably artfully. Problem is, all my photos have to be filtered through the marketing team, and they're a little more stingy and less interested in the behind the scenes, because I think there's value in keeping some of those things a secret. Right? You don't want to see the way sausage is made.
I was wondering, in your industry as a unit photographer, we were talking about phones. Do you see any possibility in the near future that, like, being a unit photographer is just basically whipping out a phone and just taking photos from there?
Yeah, sure. It is already. I mean, I do it all the time. I've made a bunch of pictures on Army of the Dead and shared them on Vero that were slightly more, artsy textures and things. But those are all made with my phone. And those photos and the content in those photos, as you could see, was artfully made into posters by clever folks.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name. There's one kid from Sri Lanka who's unbelievably talented. Can't remember his name. Oh, that's bumming me out, because it'd be nice to, maybe we can find out and you can throw it in the.
Yeah. Send me that and then I'll try and wizardry it up.
Yeah, because he's so talented, and that it got me so excited to make more, right? Because here I was in New Mexico making iPhone photos that some clever kid on the other side of the planet would turn into mock Army of the Dead posters. I mean, what? That's not just phones. That's the internet. That's the power of these Photoshop tools and the democratization of creativity and the tools of creativity. Bring it on, man. And so, look, to answer your question more specifically, there will be a place for DSLRs just due to the nature of the low light situations and some of that stuff. But come on, the technological stampede that we're trying to, holding on to, is nonstop. So give it time. Look, and which gets me thinking, it isn't about the kind of the camera you're holding. Everyone used to debate Canon, Nikon, blah, blah, blah. Now maybe it's Sony, Fuji, or it's Apple, Xiaomi, whatever, right? I don't really care. The photography isn't about, it's always the same 3 variables or 4 variables coming through this little piece of glass, right? Your creativity is the conversation you're having with the world processed through your brain. This little thing in the middle is doing your brain service, right? It's in service to your thinking. You don't let that thing determine what to think. Mm-hmm. And you have to be aware of its capabilities, but ultimately you're using it to express yourself. And so it really doesn't matter. Cell phones will be used on set, no problem. And it'll be quiet, effective, and if the photos are good, who the heck cares? And think about historically, do you care what the picture of the Hindenburg burning,
No.
What camera that was? Great moments transcend the gear. They're telling stories.
Yeah.
Similarly, do you care that we shot, a red camera on Army of the Dead and Panavision on Justice League? Does that matter? Maybe it does to the manufacturers, but not to the storytellers, not to the audience.
No. So I wanted to go back to the Snyder Cut, as it quick with that, because obviously there was a report saying people coming, like the gang's coming back together in many ways to bring it. Are you going back to do any behind the scenes photos?
I'm always at the right.
Like with Zack just doing his job.
I have no idea what the plans are, but if I'm not working and they need me, off we go. Right? It's always a game of schedule. But I don't know if they're shooting anything new. I don't know why they would need to, but I'm not privy to that. I think the conversations we've had lately are just around the excitement of the fans and the unveiling and of the news and things along those lines. But to work with Zack and Debbie and Wes and the whole, the gang, I'm always attentive to their schedule.
Yeah.
So this is a weird time, the last project I was on has been postponed. So now it's starting to creep when we get back, and that means we'll finish later. And I want to stay available for something if they're going to be if they're going to be getting going in the fall. I want to be available for them in the fall, without having to leave another project, because that's always an awkward thing, right? You want to finish a job when you start it.
Yeah.
I'm in general, not specific to the Snyder Cut, because I don't know their plans, but I like to stay available for Zack and Debbie. That's important to me.
And when
in this business because of them, it would be a crying shame if I couldn't work on every project that they're part of, if they have me.
I mean, like, when we first spoke before, you said about, you got your break from Watchmen, and then there was, Man of Steel, BVS.
Everything Zack's made since then.
Yeah. And
even the Snow Steam Iron on Vero.
Yes, I know. That's what I saw. It's like, oh yeah, that's a clay photo.
Yeah, look, in life, I don't know if I'm getting old or whatever, but loyalties and friendships.
Yeah,
that's important, and they've served me well, and I'd like to honor it's a reciprocal game, right? And so anyway, loyalties like that are what I would like to sort of be able to put at the corner and as the cornerstone of my future endeavors, on this earth. It's more satisfying. It makes minutia in a day feel more important, right? And so all of a sudden, the little things that you might have slogged through for a lesser relationship have resonance and meaning, and that going that extra mile feels like you've gone an extra 10 miles, and not in the fatigue sense, but in the value sense. And why wouldn't you want to carry on like that? We have all had those experiences, right? When you're doing something from the heart, it amplifies its import and it's everything, right? It just makes it better. So off we go. If I can keep doing that, I'm a lucky boy.
Yeah. So when was the first time, like, obviously the fans found out 2 weeks ago, or nearly 2 weeks ago. When did Zack tell you a couple of weeks before that, or did you find out when we all found out about the site, when Zack?
Look, we were all tuned in together.
Yeah.
Right. It's that would be the unravel or the unveiling, was I have a picture actually of us watching here in the house. So it's let's not go too deep into
the making.
Well, look, Zack and Debbie are dear friends, right? So let's just say that we were as excited as everybody to watch that Vero stream. And actually, it's super impressive Vero stream. I was quite delighted, and an interesting partnership with Zoom, and just the technological adeptness of Zack sitting there in his theater, managing it all.
Yeah,
he's in isolation over there at that house, and he did it all by himself. Kudos to him. I can't even figure out how to use Zoom.
This is generally the first time I've ever used this. The first person I'm speaking to ever on this.
Yeah, I bet.
So it's like, this is all new to me as well, so it's fine.
I like it, actually. It's quite nice.
Yeah.
I've heard there's some privacy concerns, but let's cut them a little slack as they're. Can you imagine being this little upstart?
Yeah.
Video conferencing company, and then just to get slammed by a worldwide pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't even use them like little sketches of like comedians going like, you know, and the big, you know, things that I should have done in the beginning of 2020, and they talk to their former selves because, hey, like, put some money in this Zoom thing. And what? Let's
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose there's money to be made, but I just think technologically, who dropped the ball on this, right? I mean, it feels like it should have been Skype's to own, and it just blew it.
Yeah, Skype, or like even, you know, I mean, even on like Microsoft, they've got their own meeting stuff. But that was
They own Skype.
I don't know, but I just when I like that was the first time I saw, like, you know, like join a group meet or something like a couple of weeks ago. I was like, well, you're a bit late at that.
Yeah, it's kind of quite reassuring, right? Because in this age of giant tech monopolies and just difficult network effects to overcome, the little upstarts like Zoom can sneak in there and seize an opportunity and not drop the ball. I mean, I'm impressed, and I think gives me hope that good ideas, cleverly executed, can keep the world evolving and not let these giant monsters keep those monsters on their toes.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to your work and speak about, because obviously, as you mentioned earlier, so you worked with Patty on the first Wonder Woman and now the second. Was there a different energy in the second when you got onto set and was there a different energy or a different, like, just more excitement when?
Well, for one, it was really fun to see a lot of the same people, right? So the energy is that of you kind of pick up where you left off. You have you're in different locations, different sets, different.
Yeah.
But in general, there's a little bit of that lovely nostalgia and memory of the last, and you push forward into the new one. So, and of course, it was less of a period piece.
Yes.
Right. So the streets weren't covered in dirt when we were out on set. You know what I mean? So the 1914 is a little different than 1984.
Did you have, in fact, like when you were on set and you saw things, was there like little flashbacks to your own past in 1984? When you, oh, yeah, I remember seeing this when I was like, you know, however old you were, and it's like
a little bit. You know, I'm not very good with nostalgia in general. Like for whatever reason, I almost identify more with the 60s, even though I was in the hippies.
Yeah.
It was crazy making a movie in 1984. I'm 50, right? So I was born in 69. It was crazy to think that Woodstock and then the 1969, the hippie scene, was far closer to 1984 than 1984 was to now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet you somehow, because you lived through 1984, feel like, oh no, I was in high school.
Yeah.
And in fact, no, my God, it was you might as well be a hippie in today's standards, maybe even to today's young folks.
Yeah.
So it's and again, it's just more fun, right? The hairdos and the costumes and the mall and things like that. The stores in the mall were probably the most sort of jarring, like, oh my God, remember that?
Oh. It's also a fascination with the 80s.
Yeah, look, I mean, everyone has their decade that they remember fondly or that was formative to them.
Yeah.
I was slightly, as always, a slight contrarian. So I was always sort of trying to push out from wherever I was a little bit. And so I don't run with that deep nostalgia. I'm more excited about manipulating today for the tomorrow I want. And that started in the 80s for me, as I sort of formed my worldviews, again, being in high school.
Yeah. So talking about now, in a sense, what is your plan? I mean, you know, depending, once COVID's done and sets are allowed to reopen, what is everything's about to, you know, be back to the new normal, as it were, or another normal. What are you hoping to achieve?
I like that, another normal.
Yeah.
So it's going to feel eventually we baseline to whatever normal is. Hopefully not like a deep surveillance state.
Nah.
But
is there work? Have you got? I mean, you said you're about work, and that was postponed. So have you got work already planned for yourself?
We would go back to the work that we were doing if it all works out. Right? That you can imagine the juggling involved, because I'm working on a project with an actor who's going to be needed in another project,
right?
A different studio, and if that other studio doesn't push their date to start, then
that's already happened with Mission Impossible. That's recently happened with Mission Impossible. Nicholas Hoult wasn't able to do the shoot anymore, and he had to go and work for another film. I can't remember which was it called now. And then they brought in a new actor to play his role.
Yeah, tricky, right? So that kind of stuff, I'm glad is not part of my, it's above my pay grade. But I've had a few calls from the studio asking about safety concerns and protocols and what, just some nice input, which I thought was very gracious. I run a little less worried about things, so I said, whatever you need me to do, I'm happy to do it. I'm keen just to get back to work and to if anything, this pandemic has shown us there's a need for filmic narrative, as streaming services seem to be the talk of the day for everybody sitting at home on their couches.
Yeah. So is that not a personal work? Like, so would you have to travel to the West Coast, and would that be?
The next project's in Europe. It's in Berlin.
Oh, okay. So traveling wouldn't be an issue for you?
No, right in the middle of it, we traveled. So I throw on a mask if that's your thing. The bigger planes are better at filtering air, but I also feel like, and this doesn't get talked about a lot, but I'm going to try and make myself harder to kill. Boost my own immune system, take care of myself, and then should there be the misfortune of a viral encounter, that my primary immune system can take it out. That might be wishful thinking, and I'm not gonna go throw all caution to the wind. But this is a multi-front defense, right? And one of them is entirely up to my biology and my honoring of the systems that deep within, right? So a mask is great, but if something gets past the mask, I want to give my body a fighting chance.
Is that what the machine's behind you about then?
Yeah, there they are. So it's like a little Concept 2 ad over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, we for whatever reason, we've prioritized fitness in the house, and even though we're in a 1-bedroom apartment in New York City, we have over 500 pounds, Olympic bars, and the works to take care of ourselves.
Has it been nice walking around New York and taking photos when there's no one about?
It is, because your eyes are sort of strained by the lack of the movement that you're accustomed to.
Yeah.
Right. I think in general, the human beings are more attuned to things when they're not there, what they get used to. And then when it's not there, there's a discomfort. And so there's a deep within, and I think some of the stress of that might be burning off on the culture right now, or burning up in the culture. But it's beautiful, but it's haunting a little bit. It's foreboding.
Yeah.
You hope that, and every day you feel like you hope this is temporary, and it keeps going on and on and on. So I worry for cities worldwide, for the planet worldwide, for economies, which are people, and the suffering that's going to come from this bizarre worldwide event.
And now I want to talk about Vero, because the last time we spoke, I said to you that I couldn't get it because they didn't have an iPad.
I remember you were relentless.
And I was. And then the first thing I downloaded when I got my new phone was Vero. And the first person I wanted to message was you to tell you that I actually got Vero. Because it was just because I remember, because obviously, and I don't know if you were at the time, but you're now a brand ambassador for the.
Yeah, I may have been, and again, that's a formal term for a friendship.
Yeah. So is that just like a, as you said, it's a formal term just for a friendship, or do you actually try and spread the word to everyone that you can?
Yeah, I think yeah, it's both. I think I'm I guess it gives me a title. Okay, we met Eamon on the set of Batman v Superman, and he's the co-founder of Vero, right, CEO. And so that friendship, then, and his talk of Vero at that time, which was just a little secret beta software,
Yeah.
grew, and now that it's a more full-fledged entity and app, I couldn't be more excited about it. I just think it's doing the right thing, right? Stripped of the data mining, stripped of the advertising, stripped of all of the nonsense and the kind of distortions that are inherent in the other services. And I'm hopeful that we'll all wake up one day and realize that there's a healthier, more useful alternative to this kind of giant behavioral experiment that's being that we've all voluntarily, seemingly, joined.
Yeah. So has it surprised you that in the 3 years when you've had like the Facebook inquiries and the Russian influence on social media, that Vero hasn't taken more of a grip on the social media game?
Look, I think there's addiction at play here and network effects, and they also can if you're Facebook and somebody wants to, and you say there was a little exodus, right, for a minute there, of people leaving Instagram to go to Vero. Facebook has every interest to suppress those messages, right? And they can and will. And I think there are games, if you will, war games, and there's some unfair. We know all about the censoring. Now imagine they're not paying any attention to the censoring of competitors. When I say they, meaning the zeitgeist is all about whatever Russians or political speech, but it takes nothing for them to just go, we'll make Vero go away, or we'll amplify the propaganda messages that Eamon is some sort of creature.
Yeah.
When in fact, right, it's just this simple, clean return to what it's the best of humanity to some extent, that where we naturally share and it is organically discovered by those interested. That's how humans function, not with this onslaught of algorithmic addiction, but that key word there, addiction, is going to be a hard thing to break. It takes initiative. I've never been a smoker, but it almost feels as bad. Yes, instead of people standing outside a building smoking, they're all just on their phones, staring at their phones everywhere.
A lot of time people are doing both.
Yeah, it's true. They used to chit chat. Anyway, I think I don't have any answers. I have observations only of the world we're in, and I'm optimistic that we'll continue to be self-aware enough and to realize that Vero is a wonderful tool, and celebrates the best of human sharing, and to me, it's just a tool. It's not a distraction. It's just an awesome way to collect notes for myself of movies I want to see, to catch glimpses, and it's like standing in the living room of people you admire, and seeing what's on their bookshelf or in their movie collection, right? And seeing those points of similarity, and having a conversation around that. That's what we do so well, and from there you can ease differences and come to common ground instead of just virtue signal and amplify the voices in your echo chamber.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the lovely things I found about Vero, is that there's an innocence to it, and then, as you said, there's it's like a weird community, in the sense that, as you said, you can go, okay, what movie is there to check out when I've watched literally every movie there's ever been now? Oh, I'm in that, and what was and this person's gave it quite a nice little right, worth a watch. So, and yeah, and it's like, whatever music and stuff like that. That's
It's really lovely, right? It doesn't have a big agenda. And what's nice, because it isn't beholden to advertisers, and because it isn't worried about selling your data, it doesn't need to bombard you. It can just be this lovely invitation to somebody's living room, and share the and in general, like the average living room has some coffee table books, a few some figurines, and right, like, and it's those are conversation starters. And that to me is a lovely way to approach social interaction, right, across in this borderless world.
Yeah.
I mean, in a million years, there are some folks whose voices and visions I would never have encountered, even though they may be on Instagram or the other services, but I wouldn't have found them, and I wouldn't be able to enjoy that occasional popping up in my feed in an algorithmic world.
No, yeah, agree. I think that's all I've got, really.
It's nice. It's nice to see you. It's nice to see you.
Thank you so much, Clay, for coming on and speaking with me. And thank you so much for watching. It really means a lot. You can follow Clay on Vero at Clay Enos and check out his incredible photos there. Or you can also go to his website with the link in the description below. You can follow me on Twitter at Sean_Wren, SHAUN_WREN. And please check out the 2 episodes of the Movie Fancast in the description below. One's with James King, and the other one is with Khalees Lockland. All that's left for me to say is thank you so much for watching, and hope you see you again soon. Bye-bye.